Hey guys, it's Will, and welcome to my brand new channel. I am very, very excited to be here today. I hope that you are excited to be here today as well. I'm very excited that you are here. I'm very blessed that I get to do this. If you feel like subscribing, it would be much, much appreciated. If you are not already subscribed, please do drop me a comment too down below. I love engaging with people in the comments. Give us a thumbs up. Let me know what you think about this video, about my new channel, about this new type of content I'm doing, and all that fun stuff. I get to talk today about a movie I don't think I've ever really talked about, like in a public forum, like on YouTube, social media, or whatever. That is a movie I absolutely love. I kid you not, that I have seen this movie probably more than 100 times. We got this movie on Blu-ray right when the first lockdown of the pandemic started. And as you know, kids like to watch movies over and over and over again. And my kids love this movie. And we watched it so many times when we were stuck at home during the pandemic. The movie is Frozen, released in 2013, is directed by Chris Buck and Jennifer Lee. It was written by Jennifer Lee. The music is by Christoph Beck. I just say that because I may mention that at some point in this video. When I say music, I mean specifically the score. It's a very beautiful score in this movie, and some of it is a major component in the scenes I'm going to be talking about here today. I'm going to be using screenshots instead of video clips because I've never done a video about a Disney movie before, and I don't know whether they would block it, basically. And I hope this video doesn't get blocked, fingers crossed, so that you can see it, and hopefully you will get something out of it. The voice talents in this film are incredible. You have Idina Menzel, you have Kristen Bell, you have Jonathan Groff, Josh Gad, Santino Fontana. I wrote it down and I still forgot it. Apologies to Santino Fontana. He's in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which is a really, really fun show. And he does the voice of Hans in the film. So specifically what I'm going to be talking about in this movie is two instances of really fantastic visual storytelling. Now, myself, as someone who went to grad school for screenwriting, and has written a number of screenplays myself, not screenplays that have been produced and made, obviously, but I've written some, and some of them have been shopped around by producers, and I've had deals with production companies and stuff like that. Nothing has ever been made. And as a writer, I do have a novel coming out in 2024. I'm currently in the editorial process on the novel. What I do when I watch movies and when I kind of interact with stories, whatever you want to call it, consume media, read books, comics, watch TV, watch movies, I pick apart the storytelling and how they're telling the story, why they're telling the story that way. I think about the choices that are made. And there is some genuinely incredible visual storytelling in Frozen. It's just so, so well done. So I'm going to be talking about two of those scenes today. So let's get right into this video. So here we are in our little slideshow. And there, I should say before I get into this, there are spoilers for Frozen in this video. And so if you haven't seen Frozen, I would say go watch it. I would assume you have seen Frozen if you're watching this video, because why else would you be watching this video? If you haven't seen Frozen, go and watch it, or just be aware of the fact that I am going to spoil some stuff. So what we're going to be talking about in the first little segment here of just astounding visual storytelling in Frozen is the scene during which Anna and Elsa's parents die. So we establish via dialogue that they are going on a trip for about 2 weeks. We see them here getting on the boat. So this is the beginning of the section that is pure visual storytelling. There's no dialogue speaking, anything like that at all. We see them getting on the boat. We see their boat in a storm in this very tempestuous ocean. As you can see, the boat is right here, kind of cresting this massive wave. It's raining. There's these dark clouds everywhere. Really, really beautiful music in this scene. Like I said, I really wish I could play the video clips and play you the music, because the music is really emotional and it really hits home, and it really emphasizes and drives home the sadness and the emotional impact of this sequence. But again, like I said, I don't know if Disney would try to block this video if I already used that material, so I'm not using it. And then what happens? The ship disappears behind the wave, and then we cut to the portrait of the king and queen and a black curtain being drawn down over it. This takes about 25 seconds, I think. It's such a short chunk of the movie. And yet through this very, very short little montage sequence, we learn that the king and queen have gone out on this trip, that they encountered a storm, that their boat crashed, and that they died, and that news traveled back to Arendelle. And then the next image we have is of their funeral. This is a really, really powerful image to me. And it's a very brief image. You don't see, I mean, it's just for a couple seconds, But what do we see here? First of all, we notice that Elsa is not here because we know that Elsa is isolating from everyone in Arendelle. And that has to do with her powers and the fact that her parents want to keep her shut away so that people don't find out that she has powers, because they don't want her to be ostracized and thought of as like a freak or a monster or something like that, right? So only Anna goes out and attends the funeral. So in addition to articulating that her parents died, this sequence is also showing us Anna's extreme isolation. She is alone between the graves of her parents, and she's wearing all black, which is the color of mourning, and her head is down, and she's just so isolated, and it's so sad. And that moves us into this scene where she goes to talk to Elsa. So what she does is there's like this shot where she's walking down the hallway and she's singing this very sad kind of version of "Do you want to build a snowman?" She knocks on Elsa's door and Elsa doesn't answer. So she sits down with her back against Elsa's door, completely alone in this hallway, wearing her mourning clothes. Her parents are dead. Then we see Elsa on the other side of the door. So this accentuates their isolation from one another. There's a really great shot in here, which I wish I could show you, where we start on Anna here, and then we pan through the wall to Elsa. So we see the physical divide between them, while we're also experiencing their emotional isolation, not only because their parents died, but because they are now isolated from one another. And remember, with the exception of the bit where Anna sings and walks down the hall, all of this is done with no words. This is pure visual storytelling. Then we have this shot of Elsa alone in her room, and we see how cold it is, right? So her power is coming out, which means that she's very, very emotional. And it also just makes her even lonelier because she's alone in this very cold and harsh world. And then I included kind of two little screenshots here because I wanted to show that the camera pulls back, right? This is very classic filmmaking technique to show how isolated a character is, because we as the audience are pulling away from them. So we're increasing our distance from them. So we're showing that they are very, very lonely and isolated, but also in opening up and showing more and more of the physical space, you see how alone she is in that space within the film. And then we see Anna completely alone in an opposite space, right? On the other side of the wall, on the other side of this barrier, wearing her mourning clothes as this darkness kind of closes in on her, like a curtain, like a stage play closing, right? This entire sequence in the film, I wrote this down, it goes from about 10 minutes and 3 seconds, which is that first image of the boat, until 11 minutes and 35 seconds. But there is a minute within that, just about a minute or so, or excuse me, no, it's about 40 seconds or so of Anna singing. So 10:03 to 10:33 is everything from the parents getting on the boat to the funeral. So 30 seconds accomplishes all of that. And then whatever this is, like 10 or 15 seconds here of them sitting on the opposite side of the doors, and these shots pulling back to show their extreme isolation. So in just 92 seconds of the movie, you get all of that through pure visual storytelling. I just think it's really, really incredible. So let's move into the next little instance of visual storytelling here in Frozen that I think is really fantastic. So here we have Elsa in some kind of official room within the palace within Arendelle. And what's happening here is that she's getting ready for her coronation. So she has come of age and she's going to be officially crowned the king of Arendelle, right? Because she's the older sibling and their parents are dead. This is a big deal because this is the first time Elsa will have been seen in public since it was discovered that she has powers. The gloves here are very important too. If you're watching this and you haven't seen Frozen, I'm just going to explain the setup a little bit to you. The gloves are important because she wears the gloves so that her ice power does not come out. They basically prevent her power from coming out. So they're very important in terms of a practical purpose of keeping her power within her, but they're also these metaphors for the fact that she's covering herself up and she's keeping her true nature hidden within her. So we see this shot of her standing in this room. Then we see the reverse shot of her dad standing here. Now we see that her dad is wearing the crown, and we understand that this is kind of like his coronation when he became king. She's getting ready for her coronation. She's getting ready to become the queen. So she's looking at the moment where her dad became the king. But there's some very, very important details here, which is what makes this such great visual filmmaking. So he's holding this staff and he's holding this ball here. And I think that this ball is supposed to symbolize the world and the fact that he has the power of the world as the king. And then I think the staff symbolizes Arendelle. I don't remember exactly what the symbolism of these pieces are, but then we cut to Anna, and she's got a candlestick, and she's got this little bowl right here. And we can also see that she's taking her gloves off, right? But you see, so she's practicing for becoming the queen, using this image of her dad. So if we just saw her, I'm going to kind of break down a little bit of the stuff that's going on here to explain why I think this is such great visual filmmaking. If we just saw Elsa doing this thing with the candlestick and this bowl, we'd be like, what is she doing? This, like, why is she taking her gloves off? Why is she holding these things? It doesn't make any sense. Because we see the painting of the dad, we understand what she's doing. She's practicing for becoming the queen, because the candlestick looks like this staff that he's holding, and the bowl looks like the ball that he's holding. I just love this shot because the way that the gloves are right in the middle, right? It's a very thematically powerful shot of like, this thing that helps her conceal who she is has been removed, and now she has to try to control herself. Which is kind of like one of the primary themes of the movie. I'm going to do a different video where I talk about some thematic stuff in Frozen, so I don't want to go too deep into that now, but I think this is a really great shot. So now we see her, in case we didn't get it the first time of what she was doing, we see it really reiterated in this big shot here. And no one at all in this scene talks about what she's doing. It's all veiled. She's singing a song during this scene, right? So nothing is being spoken about in terms of why she's doing what she's doing. But now we see, like, perfect alignment, the staff here, right? And the bowl and the ball. So we see that she's getting ready to become the queen. And what happens? The stuff in her hands starts to freeze. Now, this is really, really good setup and payoff. So setup and payoff is, I'm going to do a separate video where I really go into detail on what setup and payoff is. But in a nutshell, setup and payoff in screenwriting is exactly what it sounds like. You set something up so that you can pay it off later in the film. So this is the setup here. She's taken her gloves off, she's picked up these things, and they've started to freeze. Now we cut to her in the church. So this is the coronation. Now there's a scene that takes place between what we just saw and this, which is the scene where Anna meets Hans. So now we're in the church, and the guy presents her with the staff and the ball, and we know exactly what these are because we've seen them in the previous scene. And now the guy is saying to her, so we see that she's reaching for them with her gloves on. So this is where we get into the setup and payoff aspect of this, right? I'm going to talk about Hitchcock here for a second. I talk about this example a lot because it's a great example for explaining this type of filmmaking. So Hitchcock talks about suspense versus surprise. And the example that he uses is a bomb under a table in a restaurant. So imagine you have a scene where there's a bomb under a table in a restaurant. If people are just sitting there eating dinner and then the bomb blows up, you get one moment of surprise. And you could arguably have a relatively boring scene of people just sitting talking, and then there's an explosion. You're like, what? Okay, if the audience knows the bomb is there, then you create tension, what screenwriters call tension. You can call it suspense, the sense that the audience is having this very intense experience, that they're having an emotional connection to the film, of this kind of roller coaster ride of their emotions vacillating between hope and fear. This is another very big thing in screenwriting. And when I talk about screenwriting, what I'm really talking about is like mainstream kind of American Hollywood style filmmaking, right? Vacillating between hope and fear. So using the example of the bomb, you hope that the bomb will be discovered and that people will survive, unless you're like, unless you're a sociopath or psychopath, or whatever, and you want the people to die. You fear that the bomb will go off and people will die. And throughout the scene, you use editing and other techniques like that to manipulate the audience back and forth between hope and fear. So using the example of the bomb, essentially Elsa's powers are the bomb in this scene. We know that her powers are there. We know that the public does not know she has these powers. And we know that if she takes off her gloves and she can't control her powers and these things freeze in the church enough that other people will see it, her powers will be exposed, her life will change forever. So we are hoping that that doesn't happen. We are fearing that it will happen. So we have the setup of the scene where she's practicing so that we can have the payoff of the scene where she actually has to do this in public. And because we have this setup, we have the tension of expectations and hope and fear. Imagine this scene if we didn't have the setup scene. There would be no tension at all because we wouldn't be thinking, she's got to hold these things. She's got to take her gloves off. Oh crap, what if they freeze? Like none of that information would be in our head. It would be kind of a passive viewing experience. By including that previous scene, we now have an active viewing experience with tension in it in this scene. So it should be this great moment, right? So slowness and stillness and silence to build tension is an incredible filmmaking technique. We see it here. It's something that's used a lot in Japanese films, but like Jimmy Wang Yu, the Hong Kong filmmaker, used it in his films as influenced by Japanese films, and you see it in Westerns and stuff like that too, where you prolong moments of intensity and you focus on the emotions of the characters to elicit responses in the audience, right? So we have this very slow moment where Elsa is scared because she knows that she has to take her gloves off to pick these things up, and she knows what's going to happen. And we know, because we had that setup scene, what the fear is. So there's tension in our viewing experience. So here she is with her gloves off, but look at her eyes, right? And the huge eyes. This is something that I think that this movie is borrowing from anime. And I think that animation in general in the past few decades has borrowed from anime, which is huge eyes on the characters. And the characters having huge eyes can increase the emotional intensity and emotional communication of their facial expressions, which increases the emotional experience for the audience, right? So she's got these huge eyes, and within her huge eyes, we see her fear, which gives us tension and fear as the audience members. And we see these things start to freeze. So this is where we have the oh crap moment and the vacillating between hope and fear. We hope that she will not be discovered, but we fear that she is going to be discovered because these things are starting to freeze. And we knew this was a possibility because we saw the practice objects start to freeze. But then relief from our fear as we vacillate back to hope, because she's able to hold the things for long enough to get that aspect of the ceremony completed, put them back down, get her gloves back on before anyone realizes what's going on. And then we see the relief on her face. And that allows us to be relieved as well. So those are just two instances, of what I think are really, really brilliant visual storytelling in Frozen. I love this movie. I can't overemphasize that. I just think it's a brilliant, almost perfect. I mean, I might even say it is a perfect film. I'm going to do more videos on Frozen. So if you liked that, subscribe, stay tuned, watch the channel. Let me know in the comments what other kind of movies you'd like me to do these types of breakdowns for, other screenwriting concepts you're interested in hearing me talk about. I'm really excited to be doing this channel. I got a lot of awesome ideas, a lot of great content coming soon. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Will, like I said, and we'll see you next time.